I think it's safe to say when it comes to Rose Art brand, I can tell it's not everyone's favorite color pencil brand in my honest opinion because I used to like these back in the day when I was in my teen years, but after realizing how bad they were, I just rolled with Crayolas instead. But as time went on, I went on to try other art brands like Prismacolor, some other cheap brands they got from Ross and Staples. Most of them are good, but the problem is the quality of them were just too rich, and the pencil leads go out very quickly, but they don't go out as much like Prismacolors do, unless you're. It depends on how you're using those brands as well. So I think Rosa Art. I don't know how I feel about it, though, but I can tell Super Raz Dizzle. Shout outs to her, one of my favorite content creators on here. I think she's gonna end up making it work because, as most artists do, they can either make it work or not make it work. So to me, I just feel like when it comes to Crayolas and other cheap brands, you know, I myself knew how to make those cheap brands turn into masterpiece. So it's obvious to me, you know. So you seen my art video last year when I was drawing Venom in all Crayola pencils, and I turned that into something different, if you know what I mean. So yeah, let's get to the video.
Than it was to find actual information about rose art. And I feel like if you are in that group that I am, that was born between the late 80s all the way up until the early 2000s, we deserve financial compensation for using rose art.
Don't we all?
Nobody wanted rose art crayons. Everybody wanted the 64 count Crayola crayon set with the
Crayola
sharpener
was the
on the
truth.
back. But I feel like as I get older, I see things a lot.
I feel like I should be the brand ambassador for a Crayola brand. What y'all think?
And it got me thinking, were we all just really dramatic kids, or was rose art really the bane of our existence? So
Probably
I went
was.
ahead and took the initiative, and I bought literally so much vintage rose art, current day crazy art, and of course current day Crayola. And today I'm finally going to answer that age-old question. Was rose art really as bad as we thought it was? So the first rose art item that I tried out were these rose art 10 count markers, and these are from the year 2012. And the first thing that I gotta say is that the packaging looks exactly like Crayola.
Yeah, like similar.
Except for one key element, and that's located right here on the top. Now, if you were a kid growing up literally in the past 30 years, you know that the best part of having Crayola markers is being able to stack them in a sword and being able to
yeah.
That was the whole appeal.
Yeah, I used to do that all the time when I was messing with Crayola crayons, not Crayola, but markers and stuff. Like, you could always stock each and every one of them up and just pretend like you're a Star Wars character, and you always just swing that sucker left to right, but don't do it too hard because it'll be flying all over the house and stuff. So I used to do that a lot when I was a kid. So that right there, I can relate to it.
First of all, is the fact that you can't do that because they have a notch that prevents it from happening. Look at this. You can't snap them together. So already I'm like, no. In the trash they go. So to test out the methods, I of course tested them against Crazy Art, which is like the modern day version of rose art, and of course Crayola crayon. But let me tell you
aren't
guys
they similar,
that when
though?
I tested them out, they pretty much worked almost the exact same as the Crayola one.
Yeah.
Like if you look up
you notice the Crayola blue is much darker than rose art, but the red or the orange, on the other hand, on Rosa art, is much darker than Crayola. Crayola is like bright but darkish at the same time. Rosa art is just straight up dark when it comes to the orange. Just want to point that out.
It's like the Crayola ones, just slightly muted. But what was really dramatic was whenever I compared them to the Crazy Art. Now, if you look up close to these, it's a mess. Like an actual mess. Now, remember, these rose art markers are literally from 2012, a decade old, and I just bought these Crazy Art markers literally last week from Walmart. And the Crazy Art markers, if you look at the comparisons, they're pretty much all completely dried out. The rose art marker quality, it is slightly worse quality, but only by like a tiny micro bit. If both of them were free, I would pick the Crayola. But if I was on a budget,
Crayola's are way better.
Save some money, the rose art ones would get the job done fine. Now, the next item item that I tested out from the infamous Rose Art was an item that I 1000% had. Like, I specifically remember having this one. And as much as I loved crayons, this one was my art supply of choice back in the day. And this, of course, is Rose Art's
during those back to school days.
This one is straight up all the way from 2009, so it is 12 years old. I don't know if there's like a shortage going on or something, but I literally could not find the 8-count Crayola watercolor literally anywhere. Nowhere. And I searched 2 different Walmarts. I searched Target, Dollar Tree, online. Well, I didn't search that hard online, but regardless, I couldn't find it anywhere in my town. So ultimately, I ended up just using this like really janky 16-pack that I have from like years ago that's like missing 2 colors and the paintbrush and the entire case, and just compared it to that. My very first impression whenever I opened up these Rose Art watercolor paint thingies is that I was very impressed with this brush. And the reason I was so impressed with it is because if you look closely, it's an actual real watercolor brush. Like, this is something that I would literally use. Yeah,
I like quality stuff like that too.
And if you compare that to modern day's knockoff watercolor, this brush is the bane to my existence.
Nah.
The bristles are made out of this weird wire. The paintbrush itself is completely bendable, and then it like breaks, and then you have like this wonky little.
I'll be honest with you, Joe. Those plastic paintbrushes, the blue one right there, I guess you can use that for makeup, but as far as like for art, cut that out. But the purple one, that's quality paintbrush right there that you need to have for any kind of brand if you want to do some painting and stuff with details. So, yeah.
Or something. Like, I imagine that this paintbrush wouldn't do anything for anybody. You
know
what I'm saying? Now, as far as like the actual swatches of the Crayola, Rose Art, and Crazy Art go, I was quite taken back because if you look close enough, and I'll insert a video now, the Crayola and Rose Art, both of the paints, they like did exactly what watercolor is supposed to do, which is paint that's broken down by water. These are both really, really nice, and the colors were both very vibrant. The paint was breaking down very nice. I was very pleasantly surprised up until this point. And what actually shocked me was not from the Rose Art, but from the Crazy Art. This paint, guys, is literally
some of the worst paint that I have ever used.
You can
if you look closely, you can see that the paint, it doesn't even look like a swatch of watercolor. It kind of looks like if I mixed food coloring with like water and flour and like combined it all together and then like rubbed that concoction on a page. Crazy Art also left like this weird like film texture down whenever it dried down. So like if I was to close my eyes, I know exactly where I painted because it has like this weird crusty feel to it. And another weird thing that I found is that the paint didn't get broken down by water. It kind of like kept its form, if that makes sense. Like it was like a layer
it's like
of watercolor paint, and then like the water on top of it was just floating. And
like
then whenever
oil.
I dipped my paintbrush into it, it left like this weird indentation in the paint, which I've never seen before. And it was almost like I was dipping my paintbrush into like mud or something. The quality of the Rose Art watercolor, it is just a little bit ever so tacky. Like it does feel like it has a little bit more like a filler in it that makes it a little bit more like thick instead of like watercolor.
I wouldn't even mess with them
Rose
Art watercolors.
It's pretty much the exact same quality as Crayola in every single way. If I had to choose between the two, I wouldn't care which one because they're so similar. Next up on the list of things that I tested out from Rose Art, of course, were colored pencils. And these specific Rose Art pencils are all the way from 2010. So these colored pencils are 11 years old. And again, not to bring it up, but I really do think there's like a Crayola shortage or something going on, because along with the watercolor, I could not find any Crayola colored pencils anywhere. So ultimately, I ended up just using this like really old 24 pack of Crayola colored pencils that I have. It's like, and you thought the last one was janky, this one is like 10 times worse. Like the box is like breaking in half, and then like and then like the actual colors, like half of them are missing. And to make it even worse, whenever I was testing these out, half of these colors aren't even Crayola, they're literally Prismacolor colored pencils. So I had to be very tactical when it came to testing out the colored pencils. First thing that I noticed about these colored pencils is that they definitely look like a straight up knockoff to the Crayola ones.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen Euphoria? You know, like Maddie, or like her best friend Cassie tries to copy her and it doesn't work out. This is the exact same situation here. Now, I think this one is definitely the underdog of all the art supplies that I'm testing out today, because when I tested these out, I was actually taken back, if you will, because the Rose Art colored pencils, in my opinion, as somebody who's worked with plenty of colored pencils, just from like testing them out and doing a couple of swatches, they actually worked much better than the Crayola. Like, it's very subtle, but you can definitely see it. Like, if you look close enough,
similar,
you can
though.
see that the Rose Art just went down a little bit more smooth. You can see that the color is just a little bit more creamier, a little less waxier. So not only is it creamier and work better, but it didn't have any scratches. And on top of that, I feel like some of the color was even better than the Crayola. And as far as the Crazy Art colored pencils go, these pencils... Hold on, I need to take a second. Let me just breathe. Because I have a lot to say with this one. I feel like this art supply is so bad that it's not even famous, it's infamous, that everybody knows about it. And this, of course, is the one, the only, drum roll please, Rose Art crayons. Okay, as far as like the Rose Art crayons go, I for sure have used these in the past, and I specifically have very, very, very vivid memories of using this. And what I specifically remember about these crayons is the fact that they were so waxy that you couldn't even draw. I hated the fact that I couldn't get really detailed with my coloring books because, I don't know, they would just like smear and break all the time. I hated the way they smelled. I hated the wrapper around them.
I'll be honest with you, between them and Crayola, I think Crayolas work better because you could easily use like oil to blend the colors through, especially if you're like doing background work. But I don't know how I feel about using these Rose Art crayon stuff, but can they actually do what Crayola does in terms of using paint thinners to blend? That's one thing we're gonna end up finding out once I go to the store in the future and just buy me some. Whatever I do, like certain characters to work with the backgrounds, whatever, just to see how they do. But for right now, I want to see what she does with the Rose Art crayons.
Atrocious. You know what I mean? Like the whole experience of using Rose Art crayons, it just like made you depressed as a child. These are all the way straight from 2006. These are the 24 count Rose Art crayons. First of all, we need to do a smell test because I know for sure these are not gonna smell like Crayola. I just know it in my heart. Like I just know it.
I bet it smells like
No, I
dollars.
don't smell anything. But on the other hand, we have the Crayolas, which, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
everybody knows. If
Crayolas
I
are
say
the
the smell
goat.
of crayons, this is what it... Oh, God. Ah, it smells
Smells
so
like
good.
money.
This is what everybody knows. Oh, my God. It smells like childhood. There's literally no better scent in the world than Crayola crayons. Let's see if the Crazy Art passes the smell test. Oh, it smells like wet cardboard. It smells kind of like dirt on cardboard. Like, that is not a pleasant smell at all. Now, as far as testing out the crayons went, first I decided to test out the initial textures of it all. And what my findings found is that Rose Art, again, is very similar to the Crayola.
Yeah.
I do have to say that I did notice that the formula was a lot more like waxy. And so if you look at the swatches, I have a couple of areas that are like really dark compared to the rest of the swatch. And my theory for that is that I think Rose Art has a really soft wax to it, and the friction of drawing with it, I think, heats up the wax, and then it has this weird buildup that we all experienced
like extra
with
layers
Rose
of
Art.
wax.
And then because it was a lot chunkier, I noticed that a lot more like pieces of the wax would like get attached to the sides of the paper. But unlike a pencil, you can't just blow it off because it's like wax. And so when I was testing out the crayons, I had to like flick off the individual rogue crayon pieces. But yeah, the formula wasn't as horrendous as I remember. But what absolutely was horrendous was, no shocker, the Crazy Art. Oh my god. Like, I thought the watercolor and the markers were bad. Wait till you see the crayons. Oh my gosh. Where do I even begin? So if you look at the green swatch of the Crazy Art, you'll notice that there's like one area where it's kind of like missing color. And I don't know what happened, but as I was swatching, like the crayon just like stopped working. Like, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it was like I ran into like an area that was just pure wax that didn't have any color in it, or clear wax onto a piece of paper. Before I put these away, oh my god. Oh god. And then the last thing about the Crazy Art that like really freaked me out that the other two did not have is that the Crazy Art were really, they were like sticky.
Good God.
From this point forward, I think it's pretty clear that the Crazy Art are just like absolute garbage quality compared to the other two, which is saying a lot because we're dealing with the most notoriously bad crayon of all time. So for the color section, I didn't even bother including Crazy Art just because I feel like it would have wasted everybody's time. So I just wanted to do one last comparison between Crayola and Rose Art. And I decided to use printer paper for this because it's super slippery. And as you can see, like from afar, they're pretty identical. There's nothing really super dramatic from afar at all. And something really specifically that I remember about Rose Art crayons is that you would get like one specific color, and as you were coloring, there would be like little bits of another color in it. And that weird phenomenon of finding different colors in my crayons, that happened today. You can see that there's like weird bits of blue or black or green. I can't really tell, but there's like other colors in it. Oh, and apparently the Rose Art smears, because now my hand is all black and the paper is black as well, so that's great. The Rose Art crayon quality, it's obviously worse. But now that I've tested out Crazy Art, I feel like Crazy Art has truly shown me what terrible quality crayon is. I feel like on a scale of Crayola to Crazy Art, it's definitely floating somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, Crayola is like better.
So in
like,
retrospect,
there's no question about
I feel like Rose Art as a whole, I'm just gonna say it now, it truly wasn't the worst thing in the world. Back in like the early 2000s, you could get Rose Art stuff for literally half the price of Crayola. And just the fact that some of these Rose Art supplies worked almost identical as their counterpart, you heard it here first. Besides the crayons, justice for Rose Art. So anyway, guys, that's my personal opinion on Rose Art. 20 years later, this is what I found.
And look, like I said, I think Rose Art is something I wouldn't mess with. But if I have to give them a chance one day, if I make an art video, I would on my other channel. So make sure y'all go subscribe to that. Look, between Crayola and Rose Art, I think Crayola is still better than Rose Art and Crazy Art because I feel like Crayola was something I grew up the most because that's how I've been using my characters most of my life, just using Crayola crayons and pencils and markers. You know, them were the only brands that I love using the most. But by the time 2014 rolled around, like I said, I was trying out different brands, and that's when I was starting to grow as an artist in terms of using different kind of color pencil brands, in my opinion. But what was y'all's favorite color pencil brand? Crayola, Prismacolor, Faber-Castell, Crazy Art, Rose Art? Post those comments in down below. And yeah, I'm out of here.